Hello, class. Hope everybody's doing well. In the Lord, we are always doing well. Amen. James is a hard book, but we should be the happiest class, at least according to James. We've, we've got the most to be happy. Yeah, you suffer all kinds of trials. James, you know what James says? Consider it pure joy. You're doing really well. Guess what? Consider it all joy. You got a lot to be thankful for, and I like how James reminds us of that. Just the truth of it is something we so often forget from day to day, and sometimes we just forget to tell our face. We are in chapter 1, and verses. The section is 12 through 18. But I want to first call attention to our first verse, the first part of it. It says, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trials." Now that should sound familiar. Compare that to verse 2. "Consider it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trials." James has not left this topic. Now, we've gone different directions, talking about wisdom and dwelling on some of these topics longer, but this is all the same topic for James as we get to this section here in chapter 1. He's still talking about the same thing, and it's just another reminder of the fact that he's speaking to people who are undergoing trials. Trials that are different from the ones we face, but he is speaking specifically to those people and how to deal with those trials. And he's directing them as he directs us. Don't give up. Wow, that's cool. See that? Got a mind of its own tonight. He's telling them, don't give up. Grab onto the wider picture. Have a heavenly view of what's going on in your life. Don't get lost in the moment, the temporary. That is a worldly viewpoint. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It's not going to be hard, but we need always remember we are farsighted. We are thinking of a hope that is eternal. Now, James tells them about about having joy, and he tells them to ask for wisdom, and perhaps expecting the very next thing they are going to do is, okay, I'm asking for wisdom. He gives us some wisdom as he comes down to this next section. Blessed is the man. This is verse 12. "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him." This is wisdom from God. You read the first few verses of James and you think to yourself, this is tough. I am facing trials, and I am lacking wisdom to see this. I am lacking wisdom to understand. I'm going to pray for wisdom. Immediately in verse 12, you get this kind of answer to the who, what, when, where, how, and why. These investigative questions that journalists ask, that we ask when we're studying something intently. We want to know the answers to these questions. Well, all of those are answered in this verse. We get the what. What are we? We are blessed. Blessed. This is a beatitude of James. Blessed. We often say happy. But here, and perhaps we should think about Jesus' Beatitudes in this way, but here especially the happiness is coming from, the reason that we're happy is because we are so favored by God, because he has given grace. We have divine favor. We are fortunate. So we're talking about somebody here, the what. the wisdom that we're asking about, this blessedness, is someone who is greatly advantaged. This is a person who has an advantage. What does this verse say about the person? Who is this person? See if anybody's paying attention. Yeah, the person who remains steadfast. This is who we're talking about. You want to be blessed? This is what James wants you to know. You're blessed. Who's blessed? The one who remains steadfast, the one who is enduring, the one who is undergoing some sort of pressure and not just enduring but persevering. They're not just standing there, just taking it, but they're growing. They are enduring the pressure, but they're also living Christ despite the pressure, and perhaps that is the reason for the pressure. Where are they enduring? Under trials. Yeah, that's right. It's right there. They are enduring under trials. Uh, this isn't hard to understand. Where else would you be enduring something? Why? Why are they enduring those things? Receive the crown of life. This is why you're advantaged, because when you endure under these trials, uh, you receive the crown of life. Isn't that something that you're looking forward to? This crown of life. There is light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. There is something that we can see that's far greater, something that's far weightier than all the trials that we will face in this world. And that here is described as a crown of life. There are two words for crown that are used in the New Testament. There's one that is a royal crown, and there is one that is a victor's crown. And this crown of life is the victory crown of life. This is not the royal one. This is given to winners. This type of crown would be, if they had the Olympics and they would give them their gold medal, it wouldn't be a gold medal. It would be a victor's crown, kind of laurel that they would wear on their head. This is what is being talked about here. In other words, there is a goal, there is an end point, there is something to look forward to. Yes, sir. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, our goal in this world is to be like Christ, so that we can be with God. And God's goal for people in this world is for them to be saved so that they can be with Him. By necessity, they need to be like Christ. So, yeah, that's what we're doing here. As we are going into the world to do what God does, share with them the good news that they too can be with God, we are also continuing to be sanctified, to be holified, to be ever transformed into the image of Christ. And that takes faith, it takes growing faith, it takes trial. It takes growing pains occasionally, and that's what he's going to be talking about here. As we are looking forward to our crown of victory, if you think about an athlete training, he trains in whatever sport he is doing because he wants to just say that he was there. Is that right? I hope not. If if they're competitive, they want to win. This is what God has offered us: victory. Every single one of us. Jesus has won this victory, and we want to be like him. We can have it. All we got to do is remain faithful, and that means just like those athletes, training, exercising. You know what happens to the muscles when you lift weights? You know how you get stronger? Those little cells inside, sometimes you can feel them in a strong man's arm. Not mine, it's all flabby. But those tiny, tiny strands in your muscle, in order to get stronger, they get torn. On a cellular level, they get ripped apart so that they can come back together stronger. That's what's happening in your muscles as you train. You're being broken so that you can be stronger. Here in our spiritual life, we see the same type of thing. We are undergoing pressure. We are undergoing trial so that we can gain that victory crown at the end. So we have a part to play in this life. Though Christ has won the victory, we don't just rest on his laurels, so to speak. We rely on those laurels, on his laurels. We know that it's only because of his laurels that we have any victory, but we don't do nothing. We persevere and we grow. Our endurance then results in this crown of life. That's the why. When do we get this crown of life? Yeah, very good. Yeah, Paul tells Timothy he's finished the race. He's run the course. Something to that effect. Those words. Paul is saying, "This is what I've done, and I am on my way." He has gained that prize. He can see it in his life how he has done what he needs to do. Another passage, 1 Corinthians 9, 24 and 25. Don't you know in the race all runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way to get the prize. That doesn't mean that all of us in here, only one of us is going to get the prize. No, this is how we run. We live our life in order to get the prize, not so that others will lose and we win, but because we want to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. And we get that crown, as was spoken of in Timothy, when we have run that race, or in this verse, when you have stood the test. That goal is out there. It comes when Jesus returns. We get that crown of victory at the end of our life. Is there ever a time in this world where you will say, well, that's it for me, I'm done? Well, that should never be our mindset, should it? There's always something that we can do if it's just glorifying God in our prayers. We can still do that. So when we stand the test, enduring trials is to our advantage because it results in this victory. How? When you're facing these trials, consider it all joy, but it's so hard. How do I get this faith? I ask for wisdom. Here's some wisdom. In verse 12, God has promised this crown of life to those who love him. Trust him. Don't trust in the naysayers. Don't trust in that little voice in your head that says you can't do it. Trust in God and his word. He's a good God. What he wants for you is good. The fact that he says you can have joy in trials means that you can have joy in trials. Trust in him. That's a probably the most difficult thing to do, but this is where wisdom is leading us. And if we doubt, what did we hear earlier in James about the one who doubts? He's like a wave of the sea, shouldn't expect to receive anything. You want to stand the test of faith, trust that God is a good God, that He is getting you this crown of life. He has promised it to you. He has advantaged you. He has favored you. Therefore, you have reason to be happy, and He gives you the strength to endure. Now, the next question that we might have that James answers anyway is, why is a good God doing things that have the potential to lead us astray? What do I mean by that? Is it possible that a trial could lead you astray? I'm seeing some nodding heads. How does it lead you astray, a trial? Well, maybe we'll come back around and circle back around to that, because we're going to get into that more. Or did you already have one in your pocket? Ready? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Right. There's nowhere else to go. There's nowhere to turn. So why would you leave? And that is the mindset that we need to have. This is the best place for us. And leaving is having a temporary viewpoint. It's seeking your own worldly desires, which are temporary and self-centered. So again, there are trials put before us. God tests us. James has something interesting to say in answer to that. It's almost like he's anticipating these questions, or perhaps he's been asked these questions. Verse 13 through 15, let no one say when he is tempted, I'm being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, and He Himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. What does God want for you? Death or life? Life. Does God want good for you or evil for you? Good. Okay, so we know those things to be true. God tells us these things are true. He loves us. So if that's the case, James is saying, don't blame your failure on a good and loving God. Don't blame your failure to endure on God. You can't do that, because that's not what's happening when you face trials. It's not His intention for you to fail to endure. His intention is to build you up, not for you to run away. His intention is to change you into the image of Christ, which you say is what you want. It's not for you to turn your back. He doesn't tempt you, so you can't blame Him when you are tempted and you fail. Think about those temptations that are out there today, and some of the things the world uses, the words the world uses to describe them. Chemical imbalance. Sometimes a lot of people will blame their temptation or their sin on a chemical imbalance. What are they saying? I can't help it. This is the way I'm made. Who made you? God made me. Therefore, it's God's fault. When I sin, when I do what I know I'm not supposed to do, it's not my fault. It's a chemical imbalance. What about an addiction? It's an addiction. I can't help it. I have to go back. There's nothing that can keep me away. What about a victim of circumstance? Or just flat out, I was born that way. Those are all things that are pointing the finger at God and saying, these are all your fault. That may seem logical from a worldly wisdom point of view. but not according to God. Despite how you might describe it, despite maybe there is a chemical imbalance. Maybe you have had a bad life, a hard life. Maybe you do have an addiction. Maybe those things are true, but your personal decision, what you decide to do, that is still your responsibility, and it can't be removed just because you've had a hard life. Now, this isn't God saying, I don't care about you. Because we also, we'll see this verse come up again and again. When you are tempted, God provides what? A way of escape. Now again, God cares about you. He doesn't want you to be tempted more than you can handle. Do you believe that? Because if you're pointing a finger at God and saying this is your fault, you do not believe that He is truthful and good and providing a way out for you. You're deciding that He is not a strong enough God. Now, again, James comes out and slaps us in the face with some truth sometimes. And it's hard to hear. That doesn't make it any less true. We need to understand that He is giving us this information because He loves us. Do we blame God for things? Who did Adam blame? Eve. And not just Eve. Do you remember how he phrased that? The one you put here. That woman that you put here. It's been since the beginning that people blame others. We do wrong, though, because we choose to do wrong. We know the story of Adam and Eve, and when we hear him say that, we think, oh, he's in trouble, like the kids do when somebody says something in class. Ooh. We know he's in trouble because we know that's wrong. Think about the media, what the world is saying about temptations and trials and giving into. You think about the movies that are coming out, the stories that are coming out about villains, giving those villains backstories, trying to make them more sympathetic. But even the world knows in the end, despite whatever background they might have, whether they're mistreated by society, in the end, if they've done the crime, they need some sort of consequence. The world understands that, even though they try to fill in the gaps, and you're not allowed to say, culture made me this way, and get off scot-free. Because even the world knows there is personal responsibility. You still, despite your upbringing, despite what you're struggling with, despite your trial, you still have personal responsibility. Now, speaking of things like chemical imbalance and addiction, one of the ways that God provides us to escape temptation sometimes we don't take advantage of, He's given us one another. We can hold each other accountable, and that's a good thing. We can ask for help when we need it. If we're not using the resources God has given us, we're failing to take that way of escape that He's provided. And then we're pointing at God and saying, you did this to me. Who's choosing not to take the escape route that God's provided? I mean, sometimes we think that, when God says that, I'm not going to allow you to be tempted any more than you can, I'll provide a way of escape. That means that if you push this button, if you go out this door, it's gone. But sometimes it means using what God has provided you, which could be the church, the elders, the deacons, brothers and sisters. Maybe there's somebody in here that's trained in addictions. Maybe there's not one here, but there's one down the street at Cameron Avenue. Have you used those outlets that God has given you to escape temptation? I'm just laying that out as one possibility. What are other possible escape routes that God might provide from temptation? Sorry? Run like Joseph. Leave everything behind. Drop it and go. Which kind of reminds me of what Jesus said. If your hand causes you to sin, I'm not suggesting you go mutilate yourself in any way. But if your television is causing you to sin, get rid of it. If your computer, your phone, get rid of them. You don't need them to live life in this world and to live it to the full for God. You can do without. You can think on what it is. What escape routes might there be? Because it might not be just for you that it benefits. It might be somebody else who comes to you because they're looking for an escape. What are you going to be prepared to share with them as a possibility to get out from under the trial, the temptation that they might be facing? Okay, so I think I've said enough about that. James here says that God does not tempt, which is interesting. If we look at some other texts, we do see that we are tested by God. Tested by God. Exodus 16:4, he says there in the wilderness that I may test them whether they walk in my law or not. God says that I may test them. Deuteronomy 8, verse 2, God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commands or not. Ecclesiastes 3:18, I said in my heart with regard to the children of man that God is testing them, that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. Judges 2:21-22, I'll no longer drive out before them any of the nations Joshua left when he died in order to test Israel by them. God testing. Or John, in John 6, when Jesus is talking to Philip, I think, about feeding the 5,000. It says he said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. I want to tell you that tests, trials, and temptations are not the same thing. Tests and trials are one thing, temptations are another, and a lot of it has to do with intent. Just because God does not tempt does not mean he is not involved when we are tempted. And what I mean by that is the verse we already quoted from 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man, but God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. What did James say about where temptation comes from? Yeah, your own desire. He's not going to let it come to a point where you are out of control. With the temptation, he will also provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it. You can endure it. So that temptation can come from within us. It can come from the enemy as well. Remember the story of Job. What happened in the story of Job? Was Job tempted? Did God tempt Job? Who tempted Job? Satan. Where was God in that? He allowed it, didn't he? He allowed it. Now, God is not tempting him. God knew something about Job that Job did not know about himself. Job went through some very difficult trials, but what happened to Job in the end? He was restored. He was better off than he was in the beginning. Do you think that was a faith-growing experience for Job? And this is really the difference between the two, is that temptations tear you down. That's their purpose, to take you away from God, whereas trials build you up. The difficulty here is that they come from the same word in the Greek. So we have to understand what James is talking about from the context. And of course, God's not going to contradict himself, and James isn't going to contradict himself because he's carried along by the Holy Spirit. So he talks about tests coming from God and trials coming from God, but temptations not coming from God. It's because they're being used in different ways. And in fact, the word form is different there, in case anybody ever tells you differently. The difference is we want to ask ourselves these questions. Whose fault is it when we fail? How can God tempt me, but not, how can God test me, but not tempt me? What's the point of enduring? Remember who James is writing to. Anybody remember? 12 tribes who are dispersed abroad. These are people who have been driven from their home. Christians, part of this new church, this new thing, who have decided to crucify themselves daily to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. And now they are going through it. This is who James is writing to. They're enduring these trials. Maybe some of them are blaming God because they are facing temptation, but James here makes it clear what God's role is. The words trial and test and temptation stem from the same word. We might ask ourselves, don't tests and trials have the potential to drive us away from God? I think I already asked that question. And this is where I bring up the same verse we already looked at. Am I going over the same notes twice? Is this getting through? Does God tempt us? Are we sometimes tested by God? God tests us to make us stronger. We have to trust him in that. He doesn't test us to drive us away from him. The whole point is for us to develop greater faith and trust. It's to grow us. And he's not going to use evil to test us. He's not going to try to bring us away, cause us to sin, and then point at us and say, you sinned. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes there is a sin that we're involved in that we don't believe, and it's usually pride. And I think there was a struggle with that with Peter. But we talk about self-righteousness, about I can do this on my own. We need to be broken of that sometimes because it is taking us away from God. So God will give us a trial to humble us, to make us realize that it's not about us, it's about the God that we trust. It's the one in whom our foundation lies, whom we have our very life and being on this earth as well as the next. And Jesus tells Peter, I've prayed for you. He knows he's going to go through something. He's going to go through this trial. But even in that moment, he's not alone. Even as he denies Christ, Christ doesn't deny him. Isn't that interesting? Because what does Jesus say? If you deny me in this life, I'll deny you before the Lord. But he's not doing that with Peter. I'm getting on into a whole nother topic. Study that. Tell me what you think about that some other time. We're not going to get through chapter 1 ever. We'll be here all year. Okay. So God is trying to make us stronger. Let's think about a house that is built on a foundation. The winds that come, the storms that come, would we call a storm morally evil? No. They may break houses down, but they definitely prove a foundation, at least the way that Jesus tells the story in Matthew 7. As he said, you know this parable. Everyone who hears the words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The storm comes, but it doesn't fall because it's been founded on the rock. But the one who doesn't listen to the words of mine, Jesus says, and does not do them, will be like a man with a house on sand, and that house fell because of its foundations. What is our foundation? Where is it? Christ. Remember what James just said earlier? What is the man who asks for wisdom and then doubts? He's unstable. Doesn't that suggest a shaky foundation at least? Same picture that Jesus is painting. Man who does not listen, does not have faith enough to trust God, to hear his words and then do his words. He's doing whatever he wants. That man's building, that man's life is going to be destroyed. Where we place our foundation, God does not want us to fall, so he gives us a firm foundation from which to draw strength so that we can be refined, so that we can be transformed into the image of his son, so that we can grow. It's up to us to choose to trust in him for that. And even when we ask for wisdom, continue to trust. That was the first bell, right? Yes, I'm going to guess nobody said anything. If it was the second bell, everybody's like, yes, stop talking. So when we do have trials, they do have the potential to hurt our faith, but that's not what they're meant to do. They're meant to grow us. Temptations, on the other hand, are meant to tear us down. The difference is not what is happening. The difference is why it is happening. One is the test. The other is a temptation. When we fail, it's because we do not trust God, but we want to seek after our own desires, James says. We want to chase after what we want, our own lusts and desires. Then we fall into temptation. When does a temptation come? After we do what we want. A trial comes, doesn't have to lead to temptation if we just trust God in it. I should say a temptation all by itself can come without a trial. You could be the most blessed person and undergoing no hardship and still be tempted. The question is, are you going to trust God or seek after your own worldly desires? Who has more potential to grow? The army of slaves in the wilderness trusting in God? Or the one in Canaan behind the walls going through their regimented training led by men? It seems that one would, but where are we going to put our trust? Because God's people are the victors. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter necessarily if you're smart, have a lot of knowledge, understanding, but if you can make this decision, I'm going to love the truth, and I'm going to despise the lie. You can do that, and that is wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to love God, love truth, to no matter what we think or what the world tells us. Our focus needs to be there. Just to, these are the facts. This is the truth. People do struggle with real persecutions, real trials, and you might be going through something right now that you feel, well, I'm being too harsh. Addiction, for example. It's a really difficult thing to overcome, and without a lot of support from people, that is a difficult thing to overcome. Not impossible, but very difficult. And you might say, well, this person has no choice. They're driven by their own lusts, and nothing can change that. Let me suggest that that person had a choice to make at some point in their life, and they chose to give in to their base desires. And every time that they did that, that strengthened that bond to those desires. And as the addiction grows, whatever resolve they may have had to follow God weakens. And it's going to take a long time to turn that ship around. And that person is broken. We're all broken spiritually. Many of us are broken physically, mentally, emotionally, and this is just another way that a person can be broken. That doesn't mean lost. It means they need more support. They need more of that way of escape. God might have provided you in that situation to help clean up that mess. We don't give up on people. God doesn't give up on people. So, although this is a lot of truth, it also means we've got a lot of work to do because God is loving. And He's telling us all this because He wants us to be with Him. Didn't finish my class. Who's surprised? Yes. Still got believers out here. All right. Thanks for your attention anyway.